Northern Ireland into Scotland. Very gusty winds. We have an amber warning in place for Northern Ireland, central, southern Scotland, northern England and North Wales. Damaging gusts are possible. Check out the warnings for yourself on the Met Office website and app.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems continue in Nottinghamshire on the M1. The inside lane on that four-lane stretch remains closed northbound from junction 27 to 28, heading towards the A38 Alfreton Mansfield turn-off. A lorry's broken down, recovery works underway, taking at least half an hour to get through. On the Surrey stretch of the M25, two problems. First of all, anti-clockwise, a car's broken down in the roadwork section just before Wisley at the A3 junction 10, queues all the way back round to the M3. And the clockwise exit is partly blocked, junction 6 at Godstone. There's been a breakdown in the roadworks. In southeast London at Belvedere, the A206, the Erith Road, that's closed for a police investigation. And in West Sussex, Midway in Biddingshurst and Coneyhurst, the A272, the Coneyhurst Road, that's been closed off. Two cars have collided right on the railway bridge. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight. After all the revelations about the Southport killer now, what have so much of the mainstream media led with today? Headlines calling him the Amazon killer. That's right, they seem to be blaming Amazon for this. Please give me some strength. And you'll need your strength for the next story. A horrendous situation in Germany as a group of kindergarten children have been stabbed. One of them, a little boy, aged just 2 years old, killed. An asylum seeker from Afghanistan has been arrested. Let's discuss. And Suella Braverman reckons that Reform and the Tories need to unite if they are to defeat the Labour Party. She also says that we need to adopt some of the optimism that Trump has shown. Is she right? And a group of law experts have written to the Met Police demanding an inquiry as to how they have dealt with the pro-Palestine protests. They reckon they've been too harsh. Your thoughts? We've got all of that and lots more, and keeping me company tonight, my panel. I've got Annunziata Rees-Mogg, the Head of Communications for Popular Conservatives, and Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live for your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Donald Trump has threatened Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine. The US president said Russia will face high levels of taxes, tariffs and sanctions if President Putin does not end the war. Posting on his Truth Social, Trump expressed his love for the Russian people and his good relationship with Putin, and then issued a direct warning to stop this ridiculous war. He continued, "It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost." Meanwhile, the Defence Secretary has issued a stark warning to Putin after a Russian spy ship's been located operating off the UK coast. Speaking in the Commons, John Healey warned the Russian president, "We see you and we know what you're doing." The ship's believed to be used for gathering intelligence and mapping the UK's critical underwater infrastructure. It entered UK waters on Monday, prompting the Royal Navy to deploy HMS Somerset and HMS Tyne to track it. The Afghan suspect in the German knife attack that left 2 dead this morning was not motivated by radical Islam, according to the country's interior minister. The suspect deliberately attacked a kindergarten group in the park with a kitchen knife, leaving a 2-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man dead. Police said a 28-year-old Afghan national has been arrested, while 2 seriously injured people are receiving treatment in hospital. The Bavarian Interior Minister said the suspect was undergoing psychiatric treatment and had his asylum process closed, and said he would voluntarily leave Germany in December but had not left and remained under treatment. Meanwhile, people have begun to gather in protest with a placard reading, "We won't let diversity kill us." The stabbing adds to a string of violent attacks in Germany that have raised concerns over security and stirred up tensions over migration. Back in the UK, West Midlands police have named the 12-year-old boy who died after being stabbed in Birmingham as Leo Ross. Leo, described as funny and sweet, was found with serious injuries and died in hospital. A 14-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the fatal stabbing. West Midlands police have now revealed the 14-year-old is also being held in connection with an assault on an 80-year-old woman in the same area. And a danger to life warning has been issued for parts of the UK ahead of Storm Eowyn as Britain prepares to be lashed by severe gales. Gusts could reach up to 90 miles per hour in coastal areas, bringing the risk of travel disruption, power cuts and flying debris. The northwest will see the strongest winds, but large waves and dangerous conditions are also expected along seafronts nationwide. Heavy rain and snow are also to spread east, with up to 25 centimetres of snow possible on the higher grounds. The Met Office says the situation could escalate as the storm rapidly develops tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Sophia. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock. Now, that story about that little boy, Leo Ross, 12 years old, a 14-year-old, now arrested. I've lost count now of how many times you and I, dear viewers, have had these conversations now by these kids getting stabbed by other kids. What is this world coming to? I want to talk about knife crime a little bit later in the programme. But your thoughts on how on earth we actually resolve some of these issues, of course, always welcome. Alongside me on my panel tonight until 7, I've got Annunziata Rees-Mogg, the Head of Communications of Popular Conservatism, and Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media. And if you're sitting there thinking, how do I get in touch with you, Michelle? Where have you been? How do you not know this? Off by heart by now. You can email me at gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course, you can tweet or you can X me. And if you need to go out, I get it. You can take me with you. Put me on the radio. What a treat for your ears. But look, I do want to just start with that story you've just been hearing about in the headlines there. This is in Germany, ladies and gents. Absolutely horrific. So you've got a little group of kindergarten children, so we're talking very, very young children. They've been taken out for a little walk. As you do, what's happened? Well, these children have been randomly stabbed. The guy that's been arrested, a 28-year-old man from Afghanistan. We've just been hearing about this. One of those boys, a little 2-year-old boy, has died. A 41-year-old man, very sadly, has died as well, and other children injured in this. I mean, you've just been hearing there already, you've got protests, you know, people saying that we're not going to let diversity kill us. You've got very important elections coming up in France in February. I mean, I'm almost lost for words, almost, not quite, but almost. Where do we even begin when it comes to unpicking this, Annunziata?
How can you begin? That it is just devastating and heartbreaking, and I think all of us can put ourselves in those shoes. We've had children we've had at nurseries and kindergartens and been there to collect them, and it should be the safest environment with other young children around. This kind of thing is just pure evil. I see they're saying that the perpetrator had mental health issues. Well, then he should have been taken off the streets. That if your mental health issues are so horrific that you are going to go and stab a 2-year-old and other children and adults, you shouldn't be on any country's streets to enact those threats, those fears that we all harbour. I think we've got to take a really tough stance on this, that we need to know, both here and in Germany, who's coming into our country, what their potential problems are and what threat they do pose. And I think we've all had a very lax attitude to securing our borders.
Honestly, it just makes me rage inside. It makes me so angry. I can't imagine what the people in Germany must be feeling today. Of course, not least the families involved in this, as you say, Annunziata. You take your child to go and play with their friends, to be looked after. You might have to go to work or whatever. You don't expect these phone calls. Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
Horrific. I mean, you and your team shared this story with me about half an hour before we came on air, and I've been miserable ever since. As Annunziata said, it's pure evil. It's the embodiment of evil, the idea of stabbing a 2-year-old in broad daylight. This gentleman has also died, a 41-year-old. It appears he may have been trying to help. We don't know, that's not confirmed, but he's been described as a helper by the regional head of Bavaria. And 2 other children hospitalised. I mean, maybe his actions meant it wasn't more. If so, may he rest in peace anyway, of course, regardless, but that would be an extraordinary contribution from him. That comment as well, which I heard for the first time, about it not being motivated by radical Islam, it doesn't matter what's motivated it. The point is, the first job of the state is to protect people. If it can't protect people, you know, why should people consent to it? That's meant to be the deal. And I think really, really serious questions have to be asked. How on earth is it possible for somebody with a, quote, history of mental illness to be able to access knives, to be in public and to do what he's done? That, to me, is a failure. We don't need thoughts and prayers. We need accountability from public authorities explaining how on earth that's allowed to happen and how they won't allow it to happen again.
I mean, obviously I'm miserable. Obviously I'm sad. I'm all of those things. I'm devastated for the family, but I'm also I'm so raging. I can't tell you how angry I am, because I feel that there is not enough care and attention being placed on the protection of the citizens in a country already as the primary concern. I feel that that is being pushed down the agenda, and what's taking primary concern in government's minds is, let's provide safe asylum to anyone that wants it and all the rest of it. And I feel that that is often being prioritised above the safety of the citizens that live in that country. And when I think about this guy stabbing this 2-year-old child, obviously I feel sick, but my mind also casts back to Ireland. You had that stabbing in Parental Square, I think it was. The guy there was of foreign background, stabbing 5-year-old children. One of those children, by the way, spent nearly a year in hospital, now has to relearn everything, how to move limbs and everything, you name it. Annecy, the guy arrested for that. You've got a situation there where the person that was arrested for that, he, I think, was Syrian background. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Stabbing babies in the pram, actual babies strapped in. And I think that when people say, oh, mental health issues and all the rest of it, have we got enough care and attention when you're bringing mainly men, let's face it, from areas that live entirely different to ours, the level of violence that goes on there, wars and all the rest of it, and you're picking them up and you're putting them into Western society. I just worry that there's not enough care and consideration put into how will that adapt the mindset of that individual and what will the potential consequences be for the rest of the population.
I think there is also the fear from the authorities that they will look as though they are being in some way racist or anti some other culture, that they don't have the guts to deal with it as it should be, as it needs to be to keep citizens safe, because they don't want to be politically incorrect. And I think we've got to have a real backlash against hiding from troubles we face because we might be rude to someone.
Well, you're absolutely right, because I know I've just had my little rant there and I can feel it. I can feel it coming, or people will be getting in touch with Michelle's far right, Michelle's racist and all the rest. It's not far right or racist to want to have a basic requirement and need and desire for little children to be able to go to the park without getting a knife in their chest. What do you think it might mean for the elections in Germany?
That's a really important point. We've got those elections, I think, on February 23rd. There's, of course, a context of very similar events happening in Germany over a period of years. If there's another one before the election, I mean, that's clearly just going to be a significant boost to the AfD. Right now, they are second. I've spoken to a few experts in German politics. They say the AfD will form a government, but in their view, it won't be till 2029. They simply don't think they've got the energy to get over the line to be the largest party, larger than the centre-right CDU. I mean, they may be wrong. People get elections wrong quite a lot of the time at the moment. This will certainly give them an impetus. And you said about being called racist or far-right. There are many things in politics which are left and right. But we cannot allow 2-year-old children being stabbed to be viewed as a left-right issue. That is insanity. That is insanity.
But we were told that when the Southport, which I think we are moving on to, but when the Southport stabbings took place and people rioted objecting to young girls being stabbed, they were told they were far right. And this is a division being sown by politicians. I completely agree with you. Every single word you have said so far, I agree with you on. You and I come from completely different political standpoints, but I think we can be human and we can agree that this is evil. But as soon as politicians sow those divisions, it makes the situation worse.
Do you agree?
I think there's something to the idea that a Prime Minister or a President needs to govern on the behalf of everyone. And I thought about this with Trump, actually, recently with progressives. And there was a very smart line, which is that the cleverest thing Trump could do is he could speak to the 20% of Americans who really profoundly dislike him and hate him and just don't like his political project at all. The smartest thing he could do is, look, we want the same thing. We both want the country to be a success. We both want everybody to have the best shot in life. I think it's this way that we should proceed. You think it's that way. But we want the same thing. And I wasn't sure of Starmer's response in so much as I think that people who were trying to torch buildings, for instance, that's arson, it's a very serious crime.
Yeah, it's horrendous.
Those people should face the full force of the law. But there was a brief moment where I thought he needs to be the Prime Minister of both the people who voted for him and probably agree with him on rather a lot. He also needs to be the Prime Minister of the people that didn't vote for him, because that's how politics works. And if you don't do that, then countries become very fractious and actually rather nasty rather quickly.
What do you make to it all at home? Get in touch with me and let me know your thoughts. Another story that we've been discussing at length, of course, is a situation with Axel Ruder-Cabana. So much information is now starting, at least, to trickle out. He gets sentenced tomorrow. So what do you think that so much of the mainstream media led with today on reflection of some of this information that's coming out? They were calling him the Amazon killer. You heard that right. People are now starting to blame Amazon for what went on in Southport. I've literally heard it all now. We'll discuss that after the break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
According to a report from the RAC, many drivers see speed limits as a target rather than anything else. More than 50% of us think it's acceptable to break the speed limit.
So this morning we're asking, is it time to increase the motorway speed limit.
Let's talk to automotive journalists Danny Kelly and Steve Fowler. Gents, what a pleasure to speak to you both in one go.
I think we should join many countries in the European Union that have 130 kilometres speed limit, which is around about 81 miles an hour. I drive to London on a weekly basis, and I think the roads are capable of handling higher speeds. I think unofficially the speed limit, without getting pulled over by the local police at the time, is probably around about 78, 80 miles an hour. If a Bobby's on the motorway doing 70 miles an hour, he wants you to overtake him. He wants the free-flowing of that motorway to continue.
So should we change 70 miles an hour? You know, if people are going 80 miles an hour, just stick to 70 miles an hour as a limit. Yes, you know, it's funny when you're driving along the motorway and there's a police car going at 70 and nobody wants to overtake. But if the average is 80, just leave it at 70.
All the gantries now are fitted with the modern signage where they can change the limit at will. We all know that. It's hard to get up to 70 half the time. So, actually, we could apply those rules, couldn't we, at 80 or even 90 miles an hour and say, well, if the weather's bad, let's reduce it. If the fog's bad, let's reduce it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I hate to use this phrase, smart motorways, but they're the ones where you have the adjustable limits. They don't cover all of the motorway network, relatively small amount of the motorway network. It is a limit. You know, it's not a target, as I keep saying to my kids. God, they're bored of me saying that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel remain Annunziata Rees-Mogg and Aaron Bastani. So many of you sharing the outrage, the anger, the confusion, the despair, quite frankly, is a way of wording it, about what is going on across this time in Germany. Yvonne's saying, Michelle, ultimately, countries need to close their borders. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Yvonne, I have to say. But look, we've followed the story, haven't we, in terms of Southport closely. We've started to see some of these details start to trickle out. The sentencing of Axel Rieder-Gabbana, of course, takes place tomorrow. Now, when we're finding out all this information, what do you think the mainstream headlines have been today? I don't know how much of a barbarian this fella is, maybe. How much information was known by who and when. Pressure perhaps put onto the police or whatever not to release information. No, the Amazon killer. That was the headline of The Sun. I've got to say, I think The Mirror and The Times, I don't really think that they were much better either. Southport killer got the knife on Amazon, says The Times. And The Mirror, total disgrace. He was able to buy knife on Amazon. You've had Keir Starmer in PMQ today speaking out about some of this. Take a listen.
We are taking urgent action to ban zombie-style knives and regulating the online sale of knives. It is unacceptable that these murder weapons can be bought with 2 clicks.
I mean, am I, like, living in some strange parallel universe? Surely we're not just going to get into a position where we now start saying this is the fault of Amazon, the online shop, by the way, not the rainforest, the shop, that this happened.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Knives do not leap up off your kitchen counter and go and stab people. It's not how life works. It is evil, bad people using a knife as their weapon of choice, but they could just as easily get any other kind of weapon. And we've seen people drive cars into crowds. Cars don't kill people, people kill people. Guns don't even kill people. People use guns to kill other people. That trying to blame the inanimate object is a complete cop-out and doesn't get to the heart of the problem at all. We have a cultural problem with knife culture in this country, where we've got teenagers up and down the country who don't feel safe unless they go out, unless they arm themselves, because there are other people out there with knives. That's what we've got to tackle, not whether Amazon sells anyone a knife.
So the likes of Yvette Cooper, they've been explaining today that they're going to try and make changes to one of the bills, essentially to mean that what you'd have to do if you wanted to buy one of these kind of knives, you'd have to go through like a two-step verification process. So you'd have to have like a digital copy of, say, your passport and your driving licence, and you'd also have to hold some kind of like selfie type thing up to show that it is indeed you before you could access those knives. Aaron Bastani, where are you?
Well, I think that change is a positive one in so much as people of a certain age in this country cannot buy knives offline. And I think, obviously, you want that to be evenly applied to online commerce too. That said, those headlines are ridiculous. And the comment made by Yvette Cooper rather, for a 17-year-old to be able to get the knife he used online from Amazon, that is frankly shocking. He could have got it from his parents' kitchen.
Yes.
What difference does it make? Which is just outlandish. And often you see this with the political and media class. They have a take or a set of conclusions and they snowball and they'll wind each other up and they say, this is the problem, it's Amazon. Now, like I say, these changes are positive, but it is a complete evasion and concealment of what really went wrong, which is massive state failure. He was reported to prevent 3 times.
I know.
He was repeatedly causing problems at school.
He's admitted carrying a knife 10 times.
Yeah, this was predictable is a strong word, because what he did was just I don't think anybody could predict that necessarily. But it's not that surprising when you see what was carrying on before. So the real story here is state failure over a very long period of time, and I think there are very powerful special interests who don't want to talk about state failure, and they exist across politics and in the media too. And I think those headlines, frankly, are a disgrace to journalism.
But it's almost like when we saw that horrendous killing of David Amis, and then I remember in the comments everyone was talking about, oh yeah, everyone's got to be nice to each other on social media. What are you talking about? The guy didn't sit there and go, oh, he's slagging that MP off, so you know what? Yeah, that's now motivated me to go and attack the... It's nothing to do with that. What do you think, though, to these proposed changes to have 2 forms of ID and so on to buy these knives?
I mean, I think it's ridiculous. Last night, I actually bought a takeaway online, and I got ID'd to buy a tiramisu. Now, I thought that was completely ridiculous.
Flattered,
I don't think anyone's ever killed anyone with a tiramisu, to the best of my knowledge, but I did have to provide ID at the point at which my food arrived. And I think that is fine if you order a knife online, just as if you went into a shop, you would have to potentially show ID if you look 12. If you're 60, most of the time, they don't bother IDing you. But I think giving special controls over online is ridiculous. But also trying to blame kitchen equipment really does not get to what the problem is. And the problem is the people using the knives. And as Aaron said, there were so many chances to stop Rudy Cabana, and no one did. No, for whatever reasons behind the scenes, they didn't stop him. And if they had, those little girls would be alive.
It's just absolutely awful. And the bit that I don't get is they're saying, oh, you know, if you are under 18, you've got, you know, you'll have to do your passport, your driving licence and a selfie, whatever. Axel Rudy Cabana was almost 18.
Yeah, 17,
so what are you saying? That actually, so Axel Rudy Cabana, you can't buy the knife, but if you just hold on 2 weeks' time, then now you can. Where is the logic in this?
Well, I do agree with you, but I also think it probably makes sense to make purchasing a knife online or offline for somebody under the age of 18 as difficult as possible, and that's presently not the case. So, look, I think you need to separate disdain for Starmer, state failure, nonsense statements coming from both him and the Home Secretary, I agree on all that, and a perfectly sensible change, I think, which is what this represents. The point about needing ID for a tiramisu is a bit... That is quite bad. You know, and maybe we can disagree about how that's executed. It does seem quite onerous in terms of multiple steps that you have to go through. Do I think it's sufficient? Not at all. But I do think we have a problem of, if you want to buy something in the real world, it's actually very hard. If you want to get it online, it's actually rather easy. That's true for lots of things. And I think if government says, well, actually, we want to equalise that somewhat, I don't think that's entirely irrational.
Mary says, Michelle, zombie knives are already banned and there's still stabbings. Knives with a blade, I think it's over 3 inches, I think. You already can't sell those to under 18s and people still get hold of them. I've got a question, though. Where are people's parents in all of this? So you've just had that case in the headlines a minute ago. A 14-year-old has been arrested for stabbing a 12-year-old. Well, where is this 14-year-old's family and the families like them? If your child is carrying these machetes around with them, how do you not notice? Where is your child storing that knife? Where is your child storing this stuff? I mean, thankfully, I've never been in that position. I hope I never will be. But if you're a parent of a teenager, do you think that you would notice if your child has got this stuff? Do you check your child's bedroom, your grandchild's bedroom? There's a disconnect in my brain understanding how these kids are not noticed by the closest to them for having this kind of stuff with them. Get in touch. Tell me your thoughts. After the break, Suella Braverman, she thinks that the right needs to unite if they are going to beat reform. She also reckons that we need to adopt some of the optimism from Donald Trump. Do you agree with her on both those points or not?
Evening, weather time now from the Met Office here on GB News. This time tomorrow, Storm Eowyn will be fast approaching, bringing potentially damaging gusts of wind during Thursday night and into Friday. Before that, tomorrow there'll be a spell of wet and windy weather, but before that, tonight, relatively calm. Some mist and fog patches, especially over eastern England, and a touch of frost for northeast England, much of eastern Scotland, and many places colder than last night, not far off freezing to start Thursday. In the west, temperatures probably rising a little through the night because this band of rain will be moving in. It's going to make for a soggy start for Northern Ireland tomorrow. Generally, a calm start for Scotland, maybe a few mist and fog patches. Certainly a frosty start for many, particularly in the east. But there's that wet weather across Northern Ireland. Pretty miserable morning rush hour here, and that rain will soon be spreading to West Wales and southwest England. The winds also starting to pick up here as we go through the morning. Now, that could cause a few problems. We've got a Met Office yellow wind warning in place for West Wales, southwest England, and the wind strengthening along the south coast of England through the day as this band of rain moves through. Something we're not seeing for a while, so a spell of quite heavy rain, some snow over the hills of northern England and parts of Scotland also. Turning brighter for Wales and southern England come the afternoon, but a few showers moving in. Also turning milder, but it'll feel pretty cold again across northern areas, 5 or 6 degrees. But wetter and windier weather is on the way for Friday. This swirl, that's Storm Eowyn arriving Thursday night and through Friday. The strongest winds just tucked in here, Northern Ireland, southern central Scotland, northern England and North Wales. That's where we've got an amber warning in force as that storm moves through. Damaging gusts of wind, 60, 70, perhaps 80 miles an hour, maybe more in some locations in that amber warning area. But yellow warnings are also in place for wind, rain and some snow. Check out all the warnings for yourself on the Met Office website.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in West Yorkshire on the M1. A car's broken down, blocking off the inside lane southbound from junction 41 to 40 near Wakefield. Further south on the M1, the inside lane of 4 also closed northbound through Nottinghamshire from junction 27 to 28 towards the Alfred and Mansfield exit. A lorry's broken down just before the A38. In Norfolk, northeast of Bungay at Ellingham, the A143 has been closed northbound on the Yarmouth Road following a serious accident. In southeast London, the A206, the Erith Road at Belvedere is closed for a police investigation off Brook Street. In West Sussex, midway between Codyhurst and Billingshurst, the A272 is closed. 2 cars collided on the railway bridge, which also means that southern trains can't run as a result between Horsham and Arundel this evening. And that is the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. If you're just joining the programme, good evening to you. Alongside me, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, the Head of Communications for Popular Conservatism, and Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media. There's a lot of you getting in touch. I'm really keen to hear from you about, do you feel if we made it more difficult for people under the age of 18 to buy knives, do you think that that might actually solve the knife crime problem? You're quite divided on this, though, because people will just say, at the end of the day, you can get hold of these knives and all the rest of it from your mum's kitchen. You know, most of us have knives of some description in our kitchen, and you're just not really convincing yourself. Mike, you're in touch as well, saying that actually it's not just knives in some cases, it's this whole kind of tie-up when it comes to drugs and gangs and so on and so forth. And I agree with you, it's a very, very complex problem, this knife crime situation in this country, isn't it? Of course, Axel Rudakabana is a particular special case. He's not the same, I would argue, as the 14-year-old gangs that are stabbing each other on the streets of Britain. But look, who should lead the country? When you sit there, you hear about all of these problems and we're sitting there discussing and pontificating solutions. When you think through to the next election, who do you want to see at the helm? There's lots of differences of opinions, shall I say, putting it mildly like that. Suella Braverman, though, she's been speaking out. She's now suggesting that if the right are to return to power in this country, they essentially need to unite. So she's meaning Reform and the Tories. You know, you're head of Popcons. What's your response to that?
I think Suella raises a very interesting and important issue. And I think she takes it slightly too far. I think that the Conservative Party and Reform are two completely distinct entities. They have a different type of supporters who have joined them for different reasons. They have different ethoses. They have slightly different policies. But overall, they are, generally speaking, on the same side. And that if they want to successfully defeat socialism, which is the aim stated of both of them, they are going to have to find some way to not kill each other in the process. Now, should that be a full merger? Well, I think that's highly problematic because I don't think the supporters or the elected officials are keen on that idea, certainly not at the moment. These things can always change. But they are very different entities and people do support them for different reasons, and they're very valid reasons in both cases. And I think it would be undermining democracy to subordinate one to the other, but that you do need to have some kind of agreement so that you can fight on a not entirely united platform, but from the same side against the threat this Labour government is putting to our country.
Aaron?
Well, I do wish Keir Starmer was a socialist. I think he's... I wish he was that easy to define as well. I don't think he's anything, frankly, and that's part of the problem. Suella Braverman saying this is interesting for me because I was in her constituency ahead of the last election.
Yep.
And I met dozens of people who would say, I would vote Reform, but it's just a wasted vote here. So I'm going to vote for Suella Braverman instead. And I think she's saying this actually probably from a self-interested point of view. I think her seat probably will be quite competitive. Some kind of publicly announced collaboration would be great for the Tories, and I think it'd be very bad for Reform. Reform's whole pitch, which I think there's a very high ceiling for, actually, is we are going to remake the country. We're beyond left and right. We're Conservatives. We want things to go back to how they were in some respects, but we're very different to the party that governed this country between 2010 and 2024. Make no mistake about it. And we think they failed in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. I think there's a very high ceiling for that. I think there's a much lower ceiling to say we'll be the junior party to the Conservatives, or even the senior party in some sort of coalition. You know, Reform really should be looking at getting 35-40% if they want to win some sort of majority. An agreement like this, I think, basically would confirm what the polls are saying right now, which is you've got three parties on the mid-20s. So it depends how ambitious they are. I think the Tories are a really sullied brand, frankly, and I think this makes far more sense for them than for Reform. But equally, if there was some sort of deal, it would probably guarantee some sort of government. Though I suppose the question for you is, how effective would that be? What would they actually get done?
I think there are issues upon which both of the parties quite clearly agree. and that you could get a lot of good things done on that side. Leaving the ECHR, most Conservatives are in favour of, Reform is in favour of. Having controlled immigration, Tories are in favour of, Reform is in favour of. Economically, lower taxes, smaller government, both agree with that.
Yeah, but saying that the Tories are in favour of controlling immigration whilst presiding over monumental rises in immigration rings alarm bells in people's minds, doesn't it?
I'm absolutely not going to defend the record of the Conservative Party, and they have partly ended themselves up in that situation because they were so entrapped and entrenched in the institutions and the quangos that have been set up, the legalese that was actually set up under the last Labour government, mainly Tony Blair, some hangovers into Gordon Brown, that they couldn't do any of the things they wanted. Theresa May said, we will bring down immigration to the tens of thousands when she was Home Secretary, and time and again failed because the institutions don't let you do it. There needs to be a complete overhaul, but scrapping of these non-governmental bodies who dictate to the democratically elected politicians what they can and can't do. And I think both Reform and the Conservatives actually agree on that.
Well, let's take a listen to Suella Braverman as well, because there was another point that she was raising. And I've got to say, it's been raised by quite a few different people about Donald Trump. Listen.
And from a UK perspective, we must be able to absorb some of this changing trend and culture that will be led by the Americans under President Trump.
Do we need to do that? Do we need to absorb some of the optimism, the direction of travel from Trump?
Well, we're in two profoundly different places. So this isn't, again, a left-right issue, but if you look at, for instance, this new AI initiative involving Oracle and OpenAI, we're talking about $500 billion worth of potential investment. Meanwhile, in this country, the debate is over, I don't know, should we build a new runway somewhere? So the countries are in profoundly different places, whoever's in office. And so this idea that we can somehow magically get the optimism of American capitalism, we've been going in very different directions in a number of ways, some good, mostly bad, for the best part of 15, 20 years. This country, Britain, has not had a growth model since 2008. We've had zero productivity growth for 16 years. That's not the case with the US. And that's why they're optimistic and we're not. It's not just, let's decide to be optimistic. It's almost like cognitive behavioural therapy, but for politics. If we just decide to be something, then we'll be that thing. No, people aren't optimistic because of a failure of our model, which the political class, both sides, have failed to address for almost 20 years.
Is that fair?
I think there's a lot of truth in what you say, but I do fundamentally disagree on whether cognitive behaviour therapy for our politics can work. And if we look back to Tony Blair, who I thought was an appalling Prime Minister, and I disagreed with on virtually everything he did have Cool Britannia. He brought an enthusiasm to our country. He extolled the virtues of our culture, of everything about here and why Great Britain really was great. And it was powerful. Trump is doing it in America. Make America great again. This incredible support and belief in your own nation, in how it is and its history, not shying away from things you've done in the past, but looking to the future to make your country even better. And I think if we had even 10% of that energy and enthusiasm that Trump has got, we might start believing in ourselves again. And I think we've got into a defeatist cycle where we're told things are bad, so we think things are bad, so then they get worse, and it's got to be reversed, and that takes energy and belief.
Can I respond to that really quickly?
Yeah, of course.
I agree that optimism and positivity is hugely important. I agree we don't have nearly enough of it in politics. I think one of my criticisms of the left is that it's not nearly optimistic enough about the future. Good things are happening every day. We should talk about them more. What I would say, though, is young people aren't optimistic because they've grown up in a world which hasn't worked for them. Over the last 15 years, they can't get on the property ladder, their jobs aren't paying, they're in 50 grand's worth of student debt. And I think that young person would say to people like you and me, who've done OK, they would say, well, why should I be optimistic about the future? Why should I be even proud of the country? Maybe I am, but I don't really think about it in those terms. If I've had such a really, negative experience of life over the last 15 years, and they've kind of got a point, right?
Well, I think partly through our education system, we teach them not to have any pride in their country. That if you look at how history is taught, there are a lot of things we're meant to be ashamed of. I think there are also a lot of things that are missed out that we should be immensely proud of, and we should teach those even more so than we do the negatives. That it is good to have belief in where you come from rather than constantly questioning whether secretly all your ancestors were evil, which doesn't help anyone. And if you look again to America, Trump actually increased his young vote immensely, despite the fact they've had very similar experiences with increased house prices, with the 2008 crash that meant you couldn't borrow, so on and so forth. Yet he could communicate with them, and he could give them the hope that those things could change, that the cost of living crisis was one of his many signatures on Monday, that he has made active steps immediately to talk to the things that matter to all generations.
But do you concede that point? Because I think what Aaron says is a really key point to this, that people, so many people, will never be able to own a home. They go to work, they tick the boxes that they're supposed to do. They're decent people, law-abiding people. They have a job, they try their best. They can't afford a home for them and ultimately then for their family to live in.
Indeed, and it's a huge problem. It's also pretty regional, that if you're in the southeast, you have zero hope. The prices are so unattainable for most people, particularly younger buyers. You can address that to some extent by building more houses, but we've had a population explosion. We've also had a complete change of how dwellings are used and who lives in them, that if you have two parents living separately, you need accommodation for children in two places. That obviously takes up more space. So not only has our population grown, but the way we need houses has increased as well. And we have not, through planning, accommodated that at all. I was actually quite interested that Labour are looking, and might be something I support them on reducing environmental requirements for building new homes so that houses can be built. And I think that is important.
What do you think? I mean, you mentioned South East. Of course, you've got this new concept now where people can apparently work from home, although we'll see whether or not that tide changes. So now you've got a situation where loads of people, they'll get London-based jobs, they'll earn London-based wages, and then they're looking at the house prices in London, they can't afford that. So then off they go on their train rides up to northern towns and cities. So I would argue now that this is actually sweeping the nation. I know where I'm from, Hull. You know, the house prices there I've seen. You used to be able to buy Hull if you had £1 million. Let's just pick that figure, no offence. Now, houses, you can get houses on the outskirts of Hull in some of the villages, £2 million, even more than that. I mean, I look at it and I think this isn't anymore just a London-based thing. What do you make to it all? Lots of you are getting in touch saying categorically you definitely do not think that Reform should ever consider merging with the Tories. Lots of you are getting in touch saying that you're former Tory members and you've left the Tories because you're saying that you don't feel that they were actually Conservatives, and that's why you went back, or went to Reform, should I say. Lots of people not happy about this focus on Amazon. You're asking, one of you asked, Michelle, what's going to happen next? If someone rams a car into the person, are we going to start blaming the car showroom for selling the car? I hear you. I absolutely hear you. Look, after the break, I want to talk to you about the pro-Palestine protest. An open letter has been published now saying that the police have been too heavy-handed, essentially, when it comes to their policing of said protest. Do you agree with that or not? I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The sunshine will be returning to Cyprus, but still a few showers around for the next day or so. Much of mainland Greece fine and sunny. There are the showers across Cyprus. They'll be clearing, as should the showers over Turkey as well. But remaining pretty mixed, quite cloudy over the Balkans, with a few showers in here and for northern Italy. It's been quite wet recently in southern Spain. More wet weather to come here on Thursday, and more showers to come across the Canaries. But it should be turning sunnier in Tenerife for the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. Yeah. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biostimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process, or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome, or different vitamins and minerals in the form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose as a practitioner or surgeon very carefully and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face after all, your body after all. And mistakes can be reversible. It can be irreversible, and sometimes it's not like a booking restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life. So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon, they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Aaron Bastani and Annunciata Rees-Mogg alongside me as well. Good evening to each and every single one of you. If you do support these kind of heavy restrictions when it comes to buying knives age 18, I'm interested to hear from you whether or not you think that that would actually help solve the knife crime situation we've got in this country. Quite a few of you, actually, and you've surprised me on this. You've got in touch, you've said it's the gangs, there's too many teenage gangs in society. I've had a few of you get in touch and say it's because there's nothing for these kids to do. There's no youth clubs and stuff like that. You're saying cuts. That's one of the things that have led to teenagers being on the streets with knives today. Do you agree with that or not? Let's talk about them people being out on the street, shall we? Protesters. We all know now that in London, pretty much every single weekend, I think it is, you have a pro-Palestine march. This has gone on for some time. Well, now, law experts, they want the Met, the Metropolitan Police, to do an inquiry into how they have been handling the march. Last weekend, 77 demonstrators were arrested. They're saying that the policing of that protest was disproportionate, unwarranted, and it was a dangerous assault on the right to protest. I've got to say, a Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, I think they're doing another protest this weekend to protest about the policing of the previous protest. They want to defend the right to protest. Where are you on this, Annunciata?
I think it is absolutely ridiculous they're still protesting, that this all started after the massacre and mass kidnapping in Israel in October 23, and it has gone on virtually every weekend since. We are now at a point where there is a however long it lasts, a truce, hostages are being released. And that is to be celebrated, not to keep demonstrating. And why on earth these protesters wanted to take a detour from the agreed route so that they went via a synagogue, I do not think is justifiable. And although they say it was to go via the BBC next door, why do they need to go past the BBC? That if you're trying to lobby parliamentarians, go via Parliament. I think we should have said a long time ago, you have absolute right to protest, you have absolute right to have your disagreements heard, and that is precisely what Speaker's Corner is, because I think Londoners have had enough of every weekend being completely disrupted by these now nonsensical protests.
Aaron Bastani?
Well, I think the right to protest is only meaningful if it applies to people you disagree with. And people might think that they're wrong-headed or unnecessary or unwarranted, but if you only applied rights to people that you agreed with, then those rights wouldn't exist at all. If you look at the recent farmers' protests, for instance, by the way, I actually agree with a significant amount of what they were protesting about, that was a really powerful, I think positive thing, actually, in many ways, to see so many people from around the country protesting their point of view and their rights at the heart of government. And I do think it's a slippery slope to criminalise protest. And I say that, and I think I've probably got a relatively favourable audience here with GB News, your listeners and your viewers. Keir Starmer's Prime Minister. If he's doing this to Palestinian protesters now, who do you think's next? Genuine question. Who do you think is next? And I think everybody should care deeply about the rights to free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of protest, because it won't stop here. This man, if he's given a free hand, my personal view, and I know some people don't agree, I think he's a very, very dangerous man. And I think he'd be a very authoritarian man very quickly. And the fact that you've got the police questioning Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, talk about wasting police time. They really don't surprise me, the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister. But like I say, I think there's a really strong public interest to say this is not acceptable.
And I completely support the right to protest, as I said, but that is what Speaker's Corner was always about and should remain to be about. I think you've got the absolute right to make your voice heard. But the power of the farmers' protest was that it was rare, that they don't troop up to London every single weekend. Everyone's got ennui of seeing these Palestinian protesters in central London because they have been doing it week in, week out for over a year. And that has lost the power of the protest, let alone anything else. Continue saying what you want to get said.
But is that true, though? Maybe if the farmers were protesting every week, maybe they'd get what they want. Who knows?
Well, they are doing protests all over the country so that different people see them. That this weekend, if you happen to have a tractor and you're anywhere near Hull, go over the Humber Bridge because you will be joined by thousands of tractors, which I think must be quite a wonderful sight. I'd quite like to go. But they're making the argument to the whole country, and I think there is a power in that. But I don't think that this is having any effect. I don't think it is necessary. I think they should be allowed to have their say, absolutely, and freedom of speech is only worth it when you don't agree with what is being said. But they should not be able to bring central London grinding to a halt. And I think it is another sign of two-tier policing, because we do know that Jewish protests were banned back in October 23.
Well, what do you make to all of that? And yeah, fine, free speech, free protest, but should there ever be a line? Who decides what that line is and where? And Aaron's points, if you feel like this about an issue, a protest group that you don't like, if it was an issue that you were passionate about, would that change your view? Many people saying, Michelle, on this knife issue, it's not about stopping people buying the knives. It's been tougher once people are found to be carrying the knives. Many of you are saying 10-year prison sentence as soon as you're found with a knife. That's what you want to see, tougher, harsher sentences. You think that is the way forward to stop these people running riot with their knives. Aaron and Annunziata, thank you for your time. Thank you to each and every one of you at home. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into